Back to the topic of restrictions on new media. Bloggers believe the rules that were proposed this past week were actually aimed at them. House Democrats wanted journalists to sign a promise that they wouldn't videotape lawmakers in certain situations because of what they said were security reasons. Now, Michael Brodkorb is actually employed by Senate Republicans, but privately he writes a conservative blog called Minnesota Democrats Exposed. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And earlier in the show we did hear from the Uptake's Jason Barnett. What are your thoughts about why suddenly were people talking about cracking down on the number of people videotaping and taking pictures at the Capitol?
I don't understand why. I mean, at a time when our state is facing a $6.4 billion budget deficit, we should be allowing more access, more citizen journalists, more transparency into the process so people can see what's going on. I just don't understand why House Democrats felt it was necessary at this point in the troubles that we're facing as a state to crack down on citizen journalists and other media outlets covering the legislative process.
And I think there were some House Republicans who supported this measure as well, but in the end, most of these provisions were dropped. What is the outlook now for coverage of alternative media outlets at the Capitol? I mean, do you feel pretty secure in your ability to get in where you want to get in?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's the people's house. The people pay for that. The people pay for the legislators that were trying to control this process. This is the people's house. And I've seen bloggers all throughout the Capitol at press conferences I've attended. They have a right to be there. They're citizen journalists. They have a right to cover this process, and I hope they'll continue doing that.
All right. Now, many people out there may not have heard of your blog, Minnesota Democrats
Correct.
Exposed, but you are a conservative blogger. You also have strong ties to the Republican Party.
Sure.
Exactly. They're always changing.
Sure,
slightly.
I'm a candidate for deputy chair of our party.
Okay. Let's take a look at your thoughts on the U.S. Senate recount. How do you think it has gone so far? It appears that the Coleman camp has struggled. They've been criticized by some conservative bloggers for not running an efficient, challenge to the Franken campaign's legal thing. Do you think they were outmaneuvered by the Franken camp?
I think that there was problems with this election contest, and I think when you have a partisan Secretary of State like Mark Ritchie, that some of the problems that have been created because of that process. I have faith, though, in the judicial process. I have faith in these three judges that they will look at the issues of double counting. They will look at the inconsistency.
But was that ever proven, though, Michael?
I think that when you have more voters in some precincts and you have ballots cast, I think you have problems there. I think when you have a situation where there's actually more ballots cast than voters, I think it's a pretty clear case that there's double balloting. And I think that hopefully the judges will examine those issues, inconsistencies regarding what absentee ballots can be brought in from certain parts of the state.
Well, that is an area where it does seem that there were inconsistencies that were proven. But let's just say this three-judge panel rules against Norm Coleman. What does he do? Should he appeal?
Absolutely. He should take this he should exhaust every legal option that he has to make sure that this election was done fairly. Look, you're talking about a 6-year term here. Minnesotans have to know that the senator that's in that place was elected with the largest number of votes and not put in by unfair rules that were applied to one candidate over the other. I think Senator Coleman has an obligation not only to himself but also to Mr. Franken, should he win, to make sure that he was actually elected United States Senator, because the last thing we want is someone in there who wasn't duly elected. And I think that's the biggest problem you have right now. You have a situation where I think Minnesotans don't know who was actually elected.
Right. Let's talk about some of the controversies that are kind of tearing apart the Republican Party. Interesting cover of Newsweek this week with David Frum, a well-respected conservative writer, writing about enough and putting a big block over Rush Limbaugh's mouth there. What do you think is the future of the Republican Party in terms of where the party is headed?
I think our party is looking for a voice. I think our party is looking for its stake here, and we've had some tough elections the last few cycles, and we need to do a better job of articulating a vision for this country, for this state, on lower taxes, limited government, on the sanctity of life, on a variety of issues, and contrasting ourselves with Democrats. We've not been good stewards in some examples of shown good leadership, and we need to do a better job of that. We need to sell our ideas to the American voter and to the Minnesota voter, and make sure that they have confidence in what we've done. We've given a lot of reasons why we shouldn't be in office, whether it's
and obviously people have taken you up on that.
Runaway congressional spending, issues related with ethics and accountability, and we need to do a better job of shaping our message and contrasting it with Democrats. And I look forward to being a part of that process, and I hope that our leaders across the country and in Minnesota take advantage of the opportunity we have, especially with the Obama administration, to contrast his policies with ours and how we would do things different. Good days are still ahead for our party.
All right. Well, Michael Brodkorb, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your views. Michael Brodkorb of Minnesota Democrats Exposed.
Thank you.
Play the CravingsToGo.com Bracket Challenge for your chance to win a trip to Vegas from